students, last session we dealt with laws relating to Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act in India. Today this session we will be dealing with the laws relating to air prevention and control of pollution in India. The basic objectives of this lesson are to understand the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981, to understand the structure and functions of the pollution control boards, to understand the legal aspects relating to air pollution in India, and to understand the recent problems of air pollution and protective measures. Let us deal with the introduction of the chapter. The growing threat of air pollution is a formidable challenge to human race since it affects the lives of billions of people all over the globe. The industrialized urban society of modern times, with its components like speed transport, modern food processing, mechanized agriculture and desire for material prosperity and stability, contribute to air pollution either directly or indirectly. The effects of air pollution are assuming enormous and unpredictable dimensions. The Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981 was enacted with a view to implement the decisions of the United Nations Conference on Human Environment, Stockholm 1972 through Article 253 of the Constitution of India. It was decided to take appropriate steps for the preservation of the natural resources of the earth, which among other things include the preservation of the quality of air and control of air pollution. The particulate matter and gases that are released by industry and by cars, buses and two-wheelers is measured by using air sampling equipment. The objectives of the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. The main objectives of the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act are to provide for the prevention, control and abatement of air pollution, to provide for the establishment of Central Pollution Control Board and State Pollution Control Boards with a view to implement its purpose, and to provide for conferring on such pollution control boards powers and assigning to such pollution control boards the functions relating thereto. Let us deal with the functions of the Central Pollution Control Board. The functions are to advise the central government on any matter concerning the improvement of the quality of air and prevention, control or abatement of air pollution, to plan and cause to be executed to nationwide program for the prevention, control or abatement of air pollution, to coordinate the activities of the state boards and resolve disputes among them, to provide technical assistance and guidance to the state boards, carry out and sponsor investigations and research relating to problems of air pollution and prevention, control or abatement of air pollution, to plan and organize the training of persons engaged or to be engaged in programs for the prevention, control or abatement of air pollution on such terms and conditions as the central government may specify, to organize through mass media a comprehensive program regarding the prevention, control or abatement of air pollution, to collect, compile and publish technical and statistical data relating to air pollution, to lay down standards for the quality of air and to collect and disseminate information in respect of matters relating to air pollution. In addition to the above functions, the Central Board may establish or recognize a laboratory or laboratories to enable the central board to perform its functions under this section efficiently. The functions of the state pollution control boards. The state pollution control boards have the power to advise the state government on any matter concerning the prevention and control of air pollution. They have the right to inspect at all reasonable times and any control of the equipment, industrial plant or manufacturing process. They can give orders to take the necessary steps to control pollution. They are empowered to provide standards for emissions to be laid down for different industrial plants with regard to quantity and composition of emission of air pollutants into the atmosphere. A state board may establish or recognize a laboratory to perform this function. The state governments have been given powers to declare air pollution control areas and also give instructions to ensure standards of emission from automobiles and restriction on use of certain industrial plants. The power to declare air pollution control area. Under section 19 of the Air Act, the state government in consultation with the state board can declare any area or areas within the state as air pollution control area for the purposes of the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act, which was amended in the year 1987. The power to give instructions for ensuring standards for emissions from automobiles, with a view to ensure that the standards for emission of air pollutants from automobiles laid down by the state board are compiled with the state government in consultation with the state board may give instructions to the registration authority under the Motor Vehicles Act for ensuring standards for emission from automobiles, and the registration authority shall be bound by it. The power to give directions. The power to issue directions under section 31A includes the power to direct the closure, prohibition or regulation of any industry, operation or process, or the stoppage or regulation of supply of electricity, water or any other service. Whenever the industry violates the directions of the Pollution Control Board, authorities and indulges in causing air pollution. There are certain offences and penalties mentioned under the Act. Section 37 of the Act provides that for operating or establishing any industrial plant in an air pollution control area without the consent of the state board, or for allowing emission of air pollutants in excess of the standards laid down by the state boards, or for violating any directions issued by the board in exercise of its power and performance of its functions under the Act, the punishment shall be imprisonment for a term of 1 year 6 months to 6 years and fine. In case the failure continues, an additional fine of 5,000 rupees per day after first conviction shall be imposed. Under section 39 of the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act, whoever destroys, pulls down, removes, injures or defaces any pillar and obstructs any person acting under the orders or directions of the board from exercising his powers and performing his functions under this Act shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 months, or with fine which may extend to 10,000 rupees, or with both. Under judicial activism, we will deal with certain important case laws relating to the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act. The higher judiciary in India has been exhibiting its activism in the area of prevention of pollution consistently during the last about 3 decades. Some of the most important judgments in this connection are discussed hereunder. The Rural Litigation and Entitlement Kendra versus State of Uttar Pradesh. The Supreme Court in this case enlisted an expert committee to evaluate the environmental impact of limestone quarrying operations in Mussoorie, Dehradun region. Significantly, the Supreme Court used the committee mechanism for another purpose as well, that is to supervise implementation of the judicial orders. MC Mehta versus Union of India. In this case, the Supreme Court laid down the rule of absolute liability in preference to the rule of strict liability laid down in Ryland versus Fletcher case. The principle laid down by the Supreme Court in this case was that where an enterprise is engaged in hazardous or inherently dangerous activity and harm results to anyone on account of an accident in the operation of such hazardous or inherently dangerous activity resulting, for example, in the escape of toxic gas, the enterprise is strictly and absolutely liable to compensate all those who are affected by the accident, and such liability is not subject to any of the exceptions which operate under the tortious principle of strict liability, under the rule that was laid down in Ryland versus Fletcher case. The recognition of the principle of absolute liability in MC Mehta and the grant of interim relief in the Bhopal case proves that Indian judiciary is mature and capable enough to mete out fair and equal justice. Another case of MC Mehta versus Union of India. On 28 July 1988, the Supreme Court had directed that the entire fleet of city buses which are operating in Delhi be converted to single fuel CNG mode by 31st March 2001. Despite the direction given 3 years ago, the government of Delhi's response has been extremely sluggish. Another case of MC Mehta deals with the foundries, chemical hazardous industries and the refineries at Mathura, which were found to be the major sources of damage to the Taj Mahal. The sulfur dioxide emitted by the Mathura refinery and the industries, when combined with oxygen with the aid of moisture in the atmosphere, forms sulfuric acid called acid rain, which has corroding effect on the gleaming white marble. The industrial refinery emissions, brick kilns, vehicular traffic and generator sets are primarily responsible for polluting the ambience air around the Taj trapezium. According to the petitioner, Shri MC Mehta, the Taj, a monument of international repute, is on its way to degradation due to atmospheric pollution, and it is imperative that preventive steps are taken with immediate effect. The Supreme Court observed that the Taj, apart from being cultural heritage, is an industry by itself for the purpose of tourism and is a great revenue source for the country. Further, the Supreme Court held that the 292 industries located and operating in Agra should change over to the natural gas as an industrial fuel. The industries which were not in a position to obtain gas connections for any reason should stop functioning with the aid of coal or coke in the TTZ and may relocate themselves. The Bhopal gas leak disaster case. On the night of December 2, 1984, a massive disaster, the worst in the recent times, was caused by the leakage of methyl isocyanate and other toxic gases from a plant set up by the Union Carbide India Limited for the manufacture of pesticides in Bhopal. In the 3 days after the first leak occurred, around 8,000 people died and number of others estimated to be over 6 lakhs. They were permanently affecting their eyes, respiratory system and causing various other health related complications to people. There was an effort for an out of court settlement between the Government of India and the Union Carbide Corporation, but that failed. The Government of India then proclaimed an ordinance and thereafter passed the Bhopal Gas Leak Disaster Processing of Claims Act 1985. In pursuance of the power conferred on it under Section 3, the Union of India filed a suit on behalf of all the claimants against the Union Carbide Corporation in the United States District Court of New York. All the suits earlier filed in USA by some American lawyers were superseded and consolidated in this action. The Union Carbide Corporation pleaded for the dismissal of the suit on the grounds of forum non-convenience, that is, the suit can be more conveniently tried in India, as apart from many other factors, India was the place of the catastrophe, and the plant, personnel, victims, witnesses, documentary and all related evidences were located there. The case was hence dismissed. After the dismissal of the suit in the District Court of Bhopal, the District and Sessions Judge filed by the UCC in the Madhya Pradesh High Court against the order of the Bhopal District Court, Justice S.K. Seth reduced the quantum of interim compensation payable from rupees 350 crore to rupees 250 crore. After long drawn litigation for over 4 years, there was a settlement between the Union of India and Union Carbide Corporation, and in terms thereof, the Supreme Court in Union Carbide Corporation versus Union of India passed order on Feb 15th and 14th, 1989, directing the payment of a sum of $470 million or its equivalent, nearly rupees 750 crores. In 1991, the Public Liability Insurance Act was enacted to provide for interim compensation on a no-fault basis, that is, the person suffering harm or injury would only have to demonstrate that they had been affected by the disaster, but not have to be burdened by needing to prove that it had been due to the fault or negligence of the enterprise. Pollution control measures in Delhi. Recently, the problems arising in Delhi can be a little bit analyzed through this information. In view of extensive pollution in the premises of Delhi due to increased and unplanned industrial activity and vehicular fuel combustions, lots of measures were taken by the courts and government to control the situation, as the impact of such pollution would be massive and cause outbreak of fatal diseases such as lung cancers and other dangerous ailments. The Supreme Court has banned the registration of luxury SUVs and diesel cars above 2000 cc in the national capital, as diesel cars are believed to be a major source of vehicular emissions. The green cess on commercial vehicles entering Delhi has been hiked by the Apex Court by a whopping 100%. The Apex Court has ordered that all taxis plying in the city must convert to CNG from March next year. Also, commercial vehicles which were registered before 2005 won't be allowed to enter the national capital. The National Green Tribunal has issued directions to all authorities to strictly implement earlier orders regarding the ban on burning of waste and fine on emission of construction related dust. The National Green Tribunal has asked the central and state government not to buy diesel vehicles for its personnel and insisted on providing alternative modes of transport to people during the odd even rule, the government said it would add 1000 more buses in 3 months. Also, 9000 CNG contract carriages will be roped into Delhi to augment public transport. The Delhi government has imposed an environment compensation penalty of Rs 50,000 on 38 major projects across the city for causing dust pollution. The conclusion of this chapter is that the air pollution, both indoor, household and outdoor, has had a significant impact on the health of citizens, as well as it has an impact on the economy of the country as well. The adverse effects of air pollution are not just restricted to the urban areas, but also impact rural areas, where a majority of the population relies on kerosene and burning of biomass for lighting and cooking purposes respectively. A World Bank report titled Diagnostic Assessment of Select Environmental Challenges in India highlighted that the annual cost of air pollution, specifically pollution from particulate matter, burning of fossil fuels, amounts to 3% of the GDP of the country, outdoor air pollution for 1.7% and indoor air pollution for 1.3%. The report also observed that a 30% reduction in particulate emissions by 2030 would save India $105 billion in health related costs. A 10% reduction would save $24 billion. Announced in October 2014 by the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change, the National Air Quality Index is a measurement index consisting of 8 parameters which would disseminate information in a simple and effective manner to the common man as characterized by its slogan: one color, one number and one description. Under the AQI scheme, the levels of the 8 pollutants are categorized as good, satisfactory, moderately polluted, poor, very poor and severe, based on the ambient concentration, conformity to national ambient air quality standards and their likely health impact. It is planned that this air quality index would be extended to 20 state capitals and 46 million plus cities over the next couple of years. This was launched by the Prime Minister on the 6th April 2015. A shift towards renewable energy is part of the plan to reduce dependency on fossil fuels as well as provide clean energy to households. With these measures, the menace of air pollution, which has fatal impact on life on planet Earth, can be tackled to some extent. Not only the integrated efforts of the pollution control boards and government are enough, but extensive cautious approach and commitment from each and every individual is required in the present times in order to control air pollution. Dear students, hope you have enjoyed this session. Next session we will be dealing with the Environment Protection Act 1986. Thank you.